All right. I think we are live.
We are reaching it, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it works. All right. Well, perfect. After some technical challenges, we're finally here. Hi, everyone. My name is Anders Muskins, and I am the director and founder of Das Neue Mannheim Orchestra, and I'm proud to announce that we're trying out a new sort of format, this sort of podcast where we're discussing our newest CD release through Etcetera Records, which is called Army of Generals, Volume 1, which features music from the world of the Mannheim Court Orchestra. So joining us for the podcast today are a number of people who are from the orchestra playing prominent roles. And perhaps if the technical situation will allow, we can go through and have everyone introduce themselves. So I don't know what the order should be, because I bet the order that people are shown on the screen is different for everyone. But perhaps we can start with Federico and continue and see how it works.
Hi, everybody. I am Federico Forla. I am the first oboe of Das Neue Mannheim Orchestra. I am from Italy, from Torino, and I studied Baroque oboe, modern oboe, Baroque oboe, classical oboe in Italy and in The Hague. And I'm really happy that we can present to you today in this weird format, let's say uncommon format, the release of our new CD.
Cool. And we go then through the circle, then the next person, well, it's not really a circle. Next person will be Florencia.
Thank you, Anders. Hi, everybody. I am Florencia Gomez, and I play the flute. I specialize in historical instruments, but I have been studying the flute ever since I was a teenager. And now my passion goes especially to the 18th century instruments. And this CD was for me an opportunity to experiment, because we were right in the edge, and in the case of the flute, we were right in the edge between the keyless instrument and the instrument with the keys. And when you start playing with the clarinet, you go towards this, but you want to have the sound staying a little bit on this side. So I had a wonderful time with great colleagues, and I think that's everything I need to say about myself. Should I? Do you have any other ideas for me to to introduce myself? Well, basically that's it. I like to work with this wonderful orchestra. We have been working for some years now, and I hope you will enjoy our CD.
And next we have Amandine.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Amandine Menish. I'm playing the cello in the ensemble. I'm so sorry for the sound. So I'm playing with the DNMO orchestra since the really first concert, and I'm really happy about it, that we managed to achieve all this progress all together through the years, and that we managed to produce and record this CD. For me, it's really a joy. It not have been like super easy, but we managed quite well, I think, and I hope you will enjoy to listen to this little jewel, let's say. If I can say that. Maybe not everyone will agree with that, but I mean, at least we have a lot of joy to record it, and also it has been a really big step in our growing process as an ensemble. And so it's a first try, and we hope that we are going to have a lot more opportunities to first record because of the time, but like to make more and more concerts, to become bigger and stronger all together for the love of classical music. That's it for me.
All right, thank you, Amandine. And then next, we'll move to Clara.
Oh, here I am. Thank you, Anders. Good night, good evening, everyone. My name is Clara Sawada. I come from Brazil, São Paulo, Brazil, and I play the violin. I'm the concert master of DNMO. Yeah, like Amandine said, this is a great project, and it's an honor to be part of. It's incredible what we could achieve. And for many of us, because of the pandemic, was the first concert or the first musical activity that we did, and it went well. It went so well. It was very, very nice. So our plan now is to record 100 volumes. So let's see if we can achieve that.
Wow.
Yeah, but yeah, this first one went well, super well. So I'm really proud of being part of this project. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this little chat with us this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Clara. And now Pietro.
Hello, everybody. I'm Pietro Battistoni from Verona. And first of all, Merry Christmas to everybody. And well, I hope you will enjoy our CD and our little chat about it and about the music that we played and that we are going to play many more times.
And you play, I don't know, did you say what instrument you played? I don't remember. Maybe not. Violin. Anyways. But thank you, Pietro. And now moving on to the next would be Tinka.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. I'm a soprano, and you can hear me performing 3 arias on the album. And yeah, as everyone has said before, it was truly wonderful to be able to record this during this time. And I think there's really something truly wonderful for you to enjoy.
Thanks. And next we'll go to Corinne.
Hello, my name is Corinne. I am from Montreal and live in Basel since 7 years. And I was happy to join the Das Neue Mannheim Orchestra this summer for the first time. And I'm very proud to be part of this project. It's I think it's very unique and very special. And we can truly feel the atmosphere and the idea and the will to a bit recreate what happened some couple of centuries ago in Mannheim, and to make it alive again, but in a new format a bit, as you can see now today, with meetings on Zoom and with young people as we are, and also from all around the world. And so I was playing the viola on this first volume called Army of Generals. So voila. Looking forward to the future.
Thanks, Corinne. And last but not least, Elia.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Elia Celegato from Padova, and I'm the clarinet player of the DNMO Orchestra. It's my pleasure to be here with you all, guys, to present this beautiful work that we've all made in the summer. And just a few words about the clarinet that they use for the recordings is a Grenzer 6 keys clarinet, especially used in Vienna, so mostly like the one that Stadler used for the Mozart aria that we recorded in the CD. So I decided to use this particular instrument for Vienna, the copy made in the 2013 from Tutz in Austria. And because of probably Stadler used the same instrument for the Aloysia Weber Mozart aria. I hope you will enjoy our album.
Thank you, Elia. Okay, good. Just using Zoom is, it's always a chore, right? To turn the audio on and off. All right, well, so now that we've sort of introduced everyone for this discussion, can talk a bit about the concept behind this album. So, I mean, I guess probably as some of you gathered from the name of the ensemble, we were like the new Mannheim Orchestra. And during the 18th century, especially between 1742 and 1778, under the patronage of the Elector Karl Theodor, he was a great lover of music, and he created this orchestra in Mannheim, which became very famous throughout all of Europe, not only because it was very well regarded for producing very good performances of all of the music that was very popular at that time, but also for having its own school of composers and musicians and virtuosos who were part of the orchestra itself and contributed to this sort of Mannheim style that really had a big influence on later people like Mozart and Haydn. So as some of you might know already, Mozart, knowing about the reputation of the orchestra, was in Mannheim in 1777, and he was trying to get a job there, but apparently he was too much of an arrogant jerk and he was not that successful. At least this is my theory as to why he wasn't able to get a job there, and which we'll maybe talk a bit more about later. But what was very important about this orchestra is that they were seen as somehow the standard, or like as the best orchestra in Europe by a lot of people. And that's where we sort of got the name of our anthology, Army of Generals, which comes from a quote by Charles Burney in 1772. He basically said, "There are more solo players and good composers in this than perhaps in any other orchestra in Europe. It is an army of generals, equally fit to plan a battle as to fight it." So the reputation of the orchestra was definitely sealed at that point. So we basically wanted to revisit this repertoire sort of from the second half of the 18th century, more gallant, after Baroque, more classical repertoire. And we wanted to revive it because now the sense I at least get is that there's not so much interest in this repertoire. And especially as people who are involved in the historical performance field, it's very interesting for us to learn how to make this repertoire work again and how to bring that sort of energetic Mannheim spirit to the symphonies and opera arias and also ballets and all whatever else they're performing in Mannheim in those days. And also to sort of use it to understand how like someone like Mozart or Haydn or even someone like Beethoven, what sort of music they heard when they were young and what sort of inspired them to do what they would do later on in their careers, of course. So if you look at the track list of the album, you'll see that there's many composers, probably most of which you might have never heard of, but all sort of connected around this theme of the orchestra in Mannheim. So we have a symphony by Franz Ignaz Beck, who was a student of the first concertmaster of the orchestra, which was Johann Stamitz, who was very famous for sort of defining that Mannheim style. He sort of took a lot of influences from composers like Niccolò Jommelli in Italy and brought it all together in this ensemble and wrote symphonies and basically invented almost like a new style, of course, with some roots, of course, in other genres, but it was very revolutionary for the time. So this is around 1740, 1750 or so. We also have featured several works from Johann Christian Bach, who was the youngest son of the Bach that everyone knows, Johann Sebastian. And we have an aria from his Serenata Amor Vincitore, which is interesting because it's scored for soprano and 4 wind soloists, flute, oboe, clarinet, and bassoon. And certainly, it's well documented that Mozart was a really big fan of the work of Johann Christian Bach. And this sort of writing for winds inspired a lot of later pieces by Mozart, or even just the idea of having 4 soloists in an aria. You can think of like the Martin aller Arten from Die Entführung aus dem Serail. It's a good example of where Mozart is actually using works by Johann Christian Bach as a model to develop his own sort of style. And this also applies to the piano concerto that we recorded with an original instrument in 1787. We also did record something by Mozart, one of the arias that he wrote when he was in Mannheim, trying to impress a girl, of course. And lastly, we recorded a symphony from Karl Stamitz, who is the son of Johann Stamitz, the concertmaster. So all of these personalities were interacting in this one place, and it must have been very exciting, I guess, for someone like Mozart, who basically came from a provincial town, to see all of this music making occurring all in one center. Very exciting, I guess, the most revolutionary stuff. So, I don't know, what are we going to talk about now? I guess I could play a few excerpts from some of the pieces that we recorded. So, first, I'll just play a bit of the symphony by Beck, and you guys should tell me if it works, because I'm not sure if I will be able to know if it does. So, 1 second.
Come on, guys, we have to sing.
All right, so there was one little excerpt of a symphony that we recorded by Beck, which is actually a premiere recording. I don't think there are any other recordings of this symphony, so it's interesting. You can hear the really sort of energetic texture and sort of Sturm und Drang style that was very prominent in Mannheim, you know, with a lot of like fast moving notes and energy and the sort of fire. That's what a lot of people were drawn to, that made this style very appealing for a lot of people, I guess, at that time. What are we going to talk about now? I think I wanted to sort of discuss a bit about one of the arias they recorded, the one by Mozart mostly, because the story behind Mozart's time in Mannheim is quite interesting. Of course, he was sent there by his father because he was looking for a job. It was in 1777, I guess, so he was quite young still, like 21, fresh out of, I guess, just trying to find his way. And he arrived there and immediately set to work on trying to befriend as many people as possible so that he could get a good recommendation for the elector to give him a job. But apparently, it didn't quite work like that. While he became good friends with the concertmaster at the time, Christian Canevich, and also with the Wenzling family, so Johann Baptist Wenzling was a flutist who was very famous, very important at that time. Mozart kind of got into a sort of, he had this sort of rivalry or spat with the Vice-Kapellmeister, who was Georg Vogler. So you could imagine that if Mozart was not getting along with the management, that his chances of getting actual employment there would be kind of limited. Nevertheless, I mean, he wrote a lot of interesting music while he was there, a whole bunch of violin sonatas, flute concerto, as well as these arias that are written for some of the singers that he met there. So the one that he recorded on our album was written specifically for Aloysia Weber, and I'm going to butcher this Italian. Non so donde viene, right? And it comes from a text by Metastasio for Olimpiada. And Mozart actually talks a lot in his letters about the conception behind this piece. Because apparently he was smitten by Aloysia, and he, I guess, wanted to impress her. So he wrote this aria almost as like a gift to her. So I have a little excerpt from this letter from, I think, February 1778. And he writes, for practice, I arranged the aria, Non so donde viene, which has been so charmingly composed by Johann Christian Bach. But just because I know of the Bach one so well, and it pleases me, and it haunts my ear, I wish to try it. In spite of all this, I could succeed in writing an aria that's totally unlike this existing one. And indeed, it does not in the very least resemble it. So at first he considered giving it to the tenor Anton Raff, but at some point he decided that he would write it for Aloysia Weber because he claims that the melody that he started writing was too high for Raff, so he made it exactly in accordance with Mademoiselle Weber's voice. It is Andante sostenuto, preceded by a short recitative, and follows the other parts. And after this sostenuto again, when it was finished, I said to Mademoiselle Weber, learn the air by yourself, sing it according to your own taste, then let me hear it, and I will afterwards tell you candidly what pleases and what does not. So he wrote this aria for her, and he claimed that it was now the best aria that she has, and that will ensure her success. Now, apparently Mozart's dad was not very happy about the idea of his son marrying someone that he did not choose himself. So he wrote apparently a rather nasty letter to Mozart after, where Mozart, I don't have a copy of the letter from Leopold, but the letter that Mozart responds in is quite sad, I guess, in some ways, because he sort of pleads a bit with his dad, but accepts his authority. That he says, I have, the axiom that he accepted as a child was that next to God comes Papa. So, and his father had accused him of basically wasting his family's money, going around not really seriously looking for a job in Mannheim, but just like flirting with the people and doing debauchery. Because there's also another letter where Mozart claims that he went drinking with the Canevichs and had a pretty rowdy night. So apparently his dad was not very pleased by all this. So he wrote a letter to him to tell him to get back on the straight and narrow. And Mozart allegedly or reluctantly sort of agreed, I guess. So at that point, he decided to go to Paris because nothing was really working for him in Mannheim. So I guess in regards to this discussion, maybe I could just ask Tinka, because you're the one who, of course, sang the aria. what did you think about the setting by Mozart in this case?
Well, one thing that I found really interesting from one of the quotes is that he originally intended it for a tenor, but that he thought that it would not work for a tenor, which is very understandable because the tessitura is very high. It basically lies in the top of the stave almost all the time. And as a lyric soprano, which is my fach, I like to sometimes go down and then come up again. Then my voice feels at its finest. So it was a bit of a challenge to perform this aria and to get used to this really staying up there all the time, but it's such beautiful music that it's completely worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also found it quite interesting that apparently it was in the nature of Aloysia to sing very legato lines rather than really fast coloratura. And then if you look at the arias that he specifically writes for her, such as this one, but also Vorrei spiegarvi, another concert aria of Mozart, or Popoli di Thessalia, it's always quite high and it's always with a lot of very nice melodical lines instead of going completely crazy with the coloratura.
Which was kind of the norm at that time, right? To go crazy with the virtuosity.
Yeah, and which he also wanted her to learn, because that would complete her as a singer.
We'll open the floor to Florencia. I think
just a small bracket. I was listening to the CD. I was super happy. And one of the things I noticed, of course I noticed when we were recording, but one of the things I noticed is that the word painting of the flute and the soprano line are all the time paired, sometimes in a clean unison or passing the same note to each other. And that for me is such a magical way to use the flute, because when he says something like quel moto che ignoto mi nasce nel petto, and this syllable mina is always the beginning of this endless frozen long note for the flute. And sometimes that gives a feeling of how is the word, quel gel che le vene scorrendo mi va. So this idea that there is something very cold and unknown and you don't know where it's coming from, but it's there and it stays, and it's all the time with the soprano. It's so charming to have a flute line written like this, and it's only 2 or 3 notes, but in the precise moment, and that gives a that gives a flute player a reason to live sometimes. It's amazing.
Yeah, I can completely understand. Also minasce, it's very interesting that you start on minasce nel petto, because it says that it means that it's being born at that moment in her chest. So exactly at that moment the flute comes in. It's very poetic, beautiful.
Yeah, and something that's really striking about that aria is like the use of winds, because notably, I guess when Mozart was in Salzburg, the orchestra forces were not so plentiful. But of course, in Mannheim, he had the luxury of having flutes, clarinets, bassoons, horns. And I guess it's really one of the earlier pieces by Mozart where he really uses the clarinet to its full, like, well, I don't want to say full potential, but like he uses it in a way that sort of foreshadows what he would use it for later on in his writing, right? So apparently he was really captivated by the sound as well. And he creates this really lush sort of atmosphere. I guess I should probably play the track, right? I think that makes sense. Let's listen a bit to the recording.
Anders, just before you start the recording, I have one small request. Could you explain a little bit to our auditors what is the text all about exactly, maybe in English, so we would have an idea what we're... Because this Italian is not easy for everyone. So.
Of course. Maybe, Tinka, do you want to do that? Because I feel lazy.
No, of course. So I think originally in the setting of l'Olympiade, it's sung by a man, actually. I'm not 100% sure, and it's about the loss of a child, I think. But in this setting, Mozart kind of altered the meaning a little bit to make it sound like a woman who is falling in love for the very first time and has never ever felt that feeling before. And she's kind of like, what's happening to me? What's this in my body going on? You know, there's this feeling that's being born in her body, and it's very exciting and also a little bit scary. And yeah, so that's what it's about.
It's like Mozart was trying to plant a message in her mind or something. Oh yeah, Florencia, you want to say something else?
Yes, I want to welcome Edmundo, Michael, and Emeline.
Ah, yes.
Commenting on YouTube.
In the chat.
Please feel free to give us your comments, your questions, or your suggestions. We are here for you. Okay? And welcome, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks. In fact, I think at some point we will like open up like a Q&A session. People can like post their questions about the pieces, and we will try our best to answer them. All right. With that, I will play a bit.
Anders? Do you hear me?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yes.
Yes. So we had Michael commenting like what we already noticed before as well, that when you share the audio, it starts fading away.
Ah.
So that's I think if you go to share screen and then you click on share computer audio, this is teamwork, people. This is teamwork.
Let's try that.
If you go to share screen and then share computer audio, we'll get the audio directly via your computer and not from the atmosphere. Yeah.
Okay, let's try that.
Still. And pay attention, because if it doesn't work, we will let you know.
Okay, I'm going to try play it and tell me what happens.
Okay.
One thing, Anders, I think you should unmute your own sound, because otherwise we'll have an echo.
Oh yeah. Do you mean to mute my own sound? Of course.
Sorry, not unmute. Mute. Yes.
Okay, well,
Well, if I can say something,
go
if
for
I
it.
can say something, brava Tinka. Bravissima. Yeah. Bravo.
Bravissima, beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. Brava. Brava, brava.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed it also who's listening in the stream as well. I don't know, you can probably indicate what you thought in the chat as well. Oh yeah, I see some now.
Anders,
Mm-hmm.
Jan Hordijk is asking if his CD is already on the way.
Oh yeah, it should be coming. I mean, from what I understand, the post system is kind of not working at peak efficiency these days, but I expect it should be coming. Well, probably tomorrow, maybe. I don't know. I can't really say for sure, certain, but yeah. So, but it's in the mail, so that's the important part.
Thank you.
All right. I was just wondering, like, if there's anything else you want to say about this aria, because, or if we should move on to the more controversial portion.
But actually, if I can add something, like we were talking about the instrumentation and the way in which Mozart was really careful. Actually, exactly the instrumentation was one of the point on which he criticized very strongly Vogler music. You know? There is, in some quote, Mozart writes that Vogler, even when he has a nice idea, he can immediately ruin that in infinite way, but one of the way that he usually does is through bad instrumentation. Well, I have to say that in this area, the instrumentation is really great. I'm not sure if the poor Vogler really had this, was so bad in instrumentation as Mozart says, but I mean, we can say that Mozart did really well in this area.
Indeed, like, it's hard to say with Vogler, right? Because now, because of Mozart's review of him, which is generally super negative, now not many people are so interested in reviving his music. So, I mean, for me, I'm not actually sure. Like, I mean, I know a few pieces by him, and I guess it's okay. But at the same time, I mean, of course, Mozart is Mozart. I mean, you can't deny that he has his own special quality, and that he was a genius and he knew how to do things effectively. I wonder though if he would have somehow played more nicely with Vogel, or not Vogler, if instead of writing all these letters where he mocked him and sort of getting almost into a fist fight with him apparently at some point as well, probably his chances of getting employed would have been better, because yeah, there's also the other letter where he complains about the way Vogler was playing his sonatas. So it's kind of funny when you read that, how vicious he is when he attacks him. But indeed, it's also interesting to see how Mozart talked a lot with his father about what makes a good composition, what makes good writing, what makes a good performance. And it's also really interesting for us as like historically informed people to read this sort of material and get some ideas.
Yeah, but we always have to be careful, right? Because if we really listen to everything, or if we take like for granted, like it's true everything that Mozart write, like he in some letter praised Mannheim and his orchestra and the German musical environment, and then like a couple of years later, he said that they are all heavy and they don't understand anything about music. And then Paris is the only place where he can actually find someone that understands about music. And then also in Paris, things don't go really well. So also immediately all French people became like ignorant and like able to do nothing. So I mean, I don't know if we really can take for granted everything.
I mean, chances are it's just because he was sort of feeling sore that no one wanted to offer him a job. So indeed, I think like it's difficult when you read these letters, because I suppose they're never really intended for us to reread them, right? I mean, I hope that like in the future, can you imagine if people had access to all of your emails and all of your Facebook messages?
No, I don't want to believe that anyone will read one day my letters. please. I hope that's going to stay secret for him. I'm really sorry for him, but it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But I think what is interesting to think about, I was thinking also, the letters show also his attitude and also the reaction, the response of the Mannheim Orchestra, no? All the star players there and the army of generals, we can say. If they also refuse to, I mean, I think they recognize that he was very good, but that he was also maybe a little bit, we could say, arrogant, or we don't know exactly, but maybe not so nice to them. And we can also try to think that maybe this is also a reflect that actually Mannheim was doing very well and knew that they would survive without Mozart. They already had so much talent around there. And this is also interesting for us, I think, as performers and as das Neue Mannheimer Orchestra, to think that we are actually representing somewhere that works very well. The composers, the performers, and the quality of the music that comes out from this place is also, they're very sure of themselves.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm checking here. Yeah, thanks. Sada is wondering how Mozart would review modern performances of his pieces.
Well, I don't really want to get into that discussion. No, let's actually get into it because, I mean, we want to make some fun, right? Some controversy.
Can I also say something about that?
It relates to something I was thinking. When you're playing this music as a wind player, you have very almost zero margin for mistakes, for not for mistake, but uncertainty, for insecurity. There's zero margin, and usually you have a conductor telling you what to do, so you don't take so much responsibility. You take responsibility for your job, and if the conductor is making a mess, then that's how orchestra, let's say, traditionally works. But in this orchestra, we didn't have anyone going like this all the time.
And
So
as I understand,
each one of
also
us-
in Mannheim, they would not have had that either. It was Canada who was directing the orchestra. So
addressing this comment by Sada, each one of us had to make all the decisions all the time and take responsibility for the impact that each decision had in all the other colleagues and stay absolutely connected the entire time to each other. Otherwise, it falls apart. So this is my thought for you, Sada. It's just that.
And that's why also it's really interesting that we keep working all together as a group to grow up, because it's better and better anytime, and like time after time. Sorry for this bad English. It's, I mean, we are improving, and like we are working like in a telepathic way that like 4 years ago was totally not possible. We had to write everything on our part and everything. And nowadays we are able to rehearse just like, okay, we say something once and then one idea, bring another idea, and we even don't need to talk. Of course, we still need a lot of hours of rehearsal and everything and practice, but I mean, it's because we are playing together really often.
But who doesn't? Hours. Who doesn't need it? Huh? Hours
Yes,
of rehearsal to make a very good work.
People in Mannheim were playing together every week for
yes.
50 years. So
yes, exactly. It takes years, and we are not going to reach also this level of before years and years. And I hope anyone that will eat us before we achieve this goal.
But what you girls just said, what you Florence and Amandine just said, it's what the army of generals mean, right?
Yeah.
After all, everybody's taking responsibility, everybody's making decisions,
exactly.
And you're making this as an army, as one unity, but we're all generals, and it's hard work. It's really a lot of hard work, and I can say for myself that it's worth it.
Yeah,
it's worth it. It's tiring, but it's worth it. Yeah.
If I may add something to the conversation, I think Sarah made a very good point, asking to us also what is the perception that could be from the composer listening to our performance. And I think another interesting issue that comes out of that quotation that Anders also was reading us about Aloysia Weber was that that Mozart was saying to his father that she was kind of the incarnation of the perfect ideal of the portamento in singing. And this is also a very interesting topic, I think, for us as historically informed musicians or working in this movement of this early music. Sometimes we have also to deal with the expectations of the audience and to the taste that is generally accepted nowadays. Pinka, what do you say about that? What do you think about that? Because this is kind of a controversial
yes, and I think Anders and I have had some discussion about the topic once before, because indeed it's something that's hard to bring in the performance of this repertoire, because it does not it's not heard very much around, I think, at least not, I haven't heard it much, and I find it's scary to play with the concept, to be quite honest, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, people in those times had a different taste than now. We can't really know exactly what their taste was. At the same time,
but I think it's our job, no, to
try
to
their job,
experiment this,
but it's true.
This new technique, no.
Indeed, like the question, it's like we can't. It's actually basically impossible to know exactly what their taste was. I mean, there's no way. I mean, there just isn't enough information or evidence to really know, so to be able to say, oh, I 100% know what we were doing in Mozart's time. But at the same time, we can see all these sources. We can get some inspiration from them, which would help us sort of guide us to make decisions about music making, about our performance, and perhaps a lot of these things like portamento or other aspects like the tempo flexibility and the conductor and this sort of contact. These are all things that contribute to the music making process, and they change the way performances work. And perhaps if we do things like that, then we are getting a bit closer to what Mozart would have known, let's say. To say that we know exactly what he wanted is another question, of course. Yeah, but if anyone has anything to add to this.
Well, I have something that we can add, like another perspective, something that, of course, is really difficult to recreate or to recreate the idea and the sound that they had. But as a woodwind player, as already Florencia and Elia mentioned before, there is one point that is actually not impossible, let's say, or less impossible to rediscover, and it can be the one of the pitch and of the tuning, the temperament that they were using at the time,
and also the tempo.
Yeah, the temperament, the tempo. But this is a bit more is a bit more difficult. But to go back to a bit of the question of Sarah in the chat, like for sure, if we consider modern instrument performance, the temperament, the way in which the orchestra was tuned was completely different, and we can get a bit closer to that using instruments that are copy of the instrument of the time. For example, if we talk about the oboe at the time. Was an oboe that, unlike the modern oboe, had mainly only 2 keys or 3 keys at maximum, and this give a very big difference in the way of in which the instrument itself is tuned and on the color of each note in the instrument. And this is something that we in the orchestra try to use as a guide to try to understand color, affect in the tonalities, differences, and so I think it's something that maybe Florencia or Elia want to add something, is a clue that we can use to try to rediscover some original aspect of this music.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure if any of you want to add anything, but I could also say the same for the use of keyboard instruments. I mean, on the album, we use a piano from 1787. So it actually is an instrument that, a type of instrument that Mozart, also Johann Christian Bach, would have actually known. I mean, I'm not going to say they played on that specific one. Of course, I can't say that. But it's an instrument type that they would have known. And it gives us a lot of hints when you perform on it that sort of guide your performance. There are things that you immediately find like can't work properly. Like you can't play extremely loud, for instance. I mean, it just can't, the mechanics of the instrument cannot handle it, right? Or, and if also it has no pedals, things like this that would guide, I guess, your performance. And if you combine that with reading a whole bunch of treatises and books, and then you're getting closer, perhaps, to the goal of finding out like what Mozart would have expected. You know, if anyone else wants to add something to that.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Johann Christian Bach aria, and I did research about how and why composers choose to have the flute, but in general, it also includes other woodwinds in dramatic music. So when you start using the historical instruments, like this one, like the one I've used for this recording, then you find out that almost 60 or 70% of the finished version will come from the instrument itself, and it will mostly depend on how many flats you have, what's the tempo indication, and when all of that comes together, then you end up having a finished product, so to say, that is not so dependent on your own choices. And when you combine that with the text and the circumstances of the arias, then you have 100%, because then you have the technical aspects, and then you have the, so to say, character-like aspects. And in the Johann Christian Bach aria, I'm going now to Bach. I know we were in Mozart, but
I mean, it's time, I think, to progress to Bach.
Yeah. Then we are the echoing forest, and the echoing woodwinds, in specifically speaking, the loving echo, so the repetition of a lover's words, is since the times of the Renaissance the main task for woodwinds when we join dramatic vocal music. We are usually used to represent pleasure, to represent love, and to sweeten human beings' voices. And our main role is always to echo. And then you were saying to me, but the flute is really soft there. And I thought, well, this is Johann Christian Bach. He knows what he's choosing because he was thinking of this instrument and not on a modern boom instrument that can play super loud with 3 flats. So yeah, that's my input. It happens the same with the Mozart. So all the choices are made from the organicity of the instrument, from the body of the instrument.
Actually, the softness of the woodwinds is something that it was really a characteristic of the classical instrument. If we see the differences, for example, in the oboe, I'm just talking about my instrument. If we see the difference in the oboe, the classical oboe compared to the Baroque oboe was just a softer instrument and had this sweeter character in the high register and was meant to play softer. So for sure, everybody that would use or write for those instruments at the time will know that. And for example, there is I don't want to go back again to Mozart all the time, but Mozart at a certain point, he basically stopped writing for oboe and he started using mainly the clarinet. Exactly for that, because he thought that in many situations in orchestras or in aria, the color and the character of the classical clarinet will fit better because could mellow or melt better with the orchestra. unless the oboe usually is, unfortunately or fortunately, coming out among the other instruments.
I have something I would like to ask to all the wind and woodwinds player. In the quote of Schubert that you read before from 1784, he talks about the Mannheim Orchestra and how it sounds like, and then he says, you were saying the wind instruments were all as suitable as they could be. They lift and carry, and they fill up and animate. And I was wondering, like, if this, how do you feel about this as wind players, and also as performers, wind players in this?
Should I go first? We should all go answer these questions. The woodwinds.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, let's start with Florencia then. Why
Yeah.
not?
When you're working on this type of instrument, this is for me the less grateful instrument you will find. Meaning that you put loads of work into it, and what you get back is not so much. And especially when you're working in an orchestra, it's a very exposed instrument because, of course, you're always on the top of everything, so you have to be super well prepared. But in this ensemble, what happens to me is something that Kate Clark, my teacher, said to me once. She said to me, look, Florencia, we have to learn something about putting together an ensemble. Something that I have learned, she said, from CEOs. CEOs, they first choose the who, then the what, and then the how. So in order to have a successful project, it always begins with choosing the right people. And in recording this CD and recording this music, for me, has been a wonderful time because of the people that have been in the woodwind section. It was so easy to be completely open, completely honest about everything that was happening. And it felt so friendly and comfortable that for me, we didn't have to fight for having a space of our own, and we all really work together as a nice wind ensemble. It's something you don't get every day.
Bravo. Yeah, I guess.
You bravo, Anders. You put it.
I was the CEO, right? Because
Yeah,
I
you were the
had to put together
CEO.
everything.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you for the kind words. And I hope that I'm sure when you guys listen to the CD, you will detect some of that.
So I pass my word to the next woodwind player.
So Elia, I guess, is next on the grid.
All right. So especially for clarinetists, like in this time, J.C. Bach aria, for example, which is quite early for us with the clarinet. At that time was new instrument in the orchestra, and Mannheim was the first orchestra to have like a clarinet in there. So for us, it's a little bit more scary, the things, because we know that Mannheim, they were like the best clarinetists at that time, and you have to be able to pass from the baroque clarinet, from the bands, for the wind bands, outdoor military bands, to the symphonic clarinet, which at the time was new. So they have a huge flexibility on the embouchure, on the capability of change instrument, change pitch, because J.C. Bach in London has for sure a clarinet that goes higher pitch, like 440 almost, even more. And Mannheim were almost 430. So like even changing pitch, changing instrument, changing from outdoor to indoor was at the time, I think, probably difficult as now. So they were really, really good to do that. So it's a bit scary to be compared, like to do what they were doing at that time, especially for the clarinetists because of this. But like, it was a challenge and super cool things to do actually. So yeah, very good question, by the way.
All right. Well, thanks, Elia.
So
And
I close this little trio
Yes.
of woodwinds, and actually I have to say that it's true. If you read many quotes of us, and also many quotes from many modern player of classical oboe. The classical oboe is one of the most difficult to play among the other instruments. But I have to say that this music was written for this instrument, and you can really feel that. And in order to maybe sum up a bit, I think that it really resembles the kind of work that we are trying to do all together with the DNMO orchestra and with our CD. We try to recreate and propose something that was unknown, that might be considered like tricky, difficult, and not very nice, not really well fitted. But with our CD, with the list of pieces that we are proposing, we are trying to showcase the really big achievement of the Mannheim orchestras of the 18th century, so the one of the instrumental music. They were the first, the Mannheim Orchestra was the first place, or the first group of people that really started developing the symphonic repertoire, or both like in solo instrumental music or in operas with aria and soloist. And I think that all of this was possible because there were great musician, great maker, great composer, and a great musical and artistic environment. Were we able to recreate that in our CD? I think that this is up to our listener, and it's like up to them to let us know. For sure, we will continue trying with more volumes of our Army of General series.
Yeah, we expect the next to be coming in April, I think.
Exactly. There will be in April a second CD where you will listen a bit more carefully or in detail to some flute music and some oboe music from some of the great master, and both in playing, performing, and in composing of the Mannheim Orchestra. And hopefully you will enjoy also the version of Das New Mannheim Orchestra in the 21st century revisitation or edition.
Yeah. Indeed.
Well, if I may add also the string player point of view, at least I'm a violinist, and I can say that for me, for example, one of the most interesting things is to really see how much broad was the palette of colors and dynamics that probably these composers were thinking about, because we're so different, as you were saying. Also, my colleagues were saying before that comparing the use of historical instruments that really have to force us to kind of really get into another range of dynamics, like playing the J.C. Bach concerto with the square piano was really a sort of challenge at the beginning, because in the tutti, the sound of the fortepiano was kind of disappearing. Sorry, Anders, to say that. And we had also to of course, yeah, I mean, get used to that.
Adapt.
And then but also also playing with as Florencio was saying, with the flutes. I mean, probably because these were the chamber music kind of repertoire that they were playing, but they were also really much looking for a new sort of range of sounds, because we have to remember that this orchestra, the Mannheim Orchestra, was the biggest kind of sound factory existing at the time. It was the biggest orchestra with the greatest amount of players in it. So it was really about flexibility, I think, and striking the audience, and also, of course, different locations and different location for performing. But these two things, these two, I think it's really interesting also for us to sort of recreate these two goals in a way.
And Pietro, or all the musicians in the orchestra, could we say that as musicians of the orchestra, as string players, when we play with other instruments as clarinet or oboes or flutes with a copy of a historical instrument, do you feel that we have to be even more flexible and even adapt, like you said, Clara, adapt, I think, even more our technique or our way of playing to the other, in order to create something together?
Yeah, I feel that. I feel that very much. And it's amazing, like Piet was saying, the palette that we can create with that, right? It's not only about dynamics, it's also about colors, and timbre and like how it sounds. We have like infinity palette of colors, you know, it's incredible. We have to think about how a flute sounds so we can adapt better to their sound, which is completely different from the oboe, which is completely different from the clarinet, right? And the bassoon and so on. And I think going back to the beginning of this conversation, this is what it means to be part of the arm of generals, right? You have to be flexible and adaptable and quick in your feet. So we are able to create this beautiful and like super diverse universe that I think without the instruments itself wouldn't be possible at all.
Yeah, so it requires, I would say, if you agree, I don't know if you agree with me, it requires on one side, so a technical mastery to master your instrument. Mastery, thank you, of our instrument for each of us. So in this way, we are a general of our instrument, and also we are a general of music, musicianship and music making. And as you said, Anders, this is part of the process of music making as well. And also master, I was thinking, for example, we talked a lot about the historical instruments of the winds and woodwinds, but also I feel as a viola player or violinist, that I feel that my instrument, like the gut string, helps me a lot to create, as you said, Clara, more textures, more colors, diverse, add to my palette, that I had much less possibilities with the metal strings, and with changing to the gut strings as they had at the time allows an infinite possibility. Like I feel it opens a door. And doing this, and also maybe even I would say the fingering, because since we are in a different position, like we can also use the fingering to create also other sounds. So for me, it's also interesting to see how I am personally involved technically, musically, to adapt. Yeah, I think it's also.
Yeah, 100%. I agree 100%. Yeah, it's funny you comment about fingerings, because I was talking to my colleagues, the first violins, and we are trying some new fingerings, you know, like, because we have, coming from the modern violin, we play in such different way, you know. Actually playing the historical violin is actually playing in a way a different instrument. We have to learn how to play in gut strings, which is much more demanding in my opinion. You know, there's a certain depth of the string that we have to understand how to really enter the string, and which makes it so much more diverse, right? Because in the moment you can control that string, you basically have the word at your fingertips. And the same with the fingerings, because I mean, taste changes, right? So the fingerings also change because they go according to what they want to hear. And we're trying to use these different techniques. Yeah, for sure. They make the whole difference. It's amazing how little details like this that comes with our mastery, our years of study and research, they bring us to a different world, right? Travel back in time, perhaps, if we're lucky enough.
To enter the conversation.
Oh, well,
Exactly. No, I wanted to ask Tinka one question, actually, because we talk about. Exactly. We all want to know because actually we spoke about all the instrument and like there is one instrument that never changed, and this is the voice. But you are singing with different instruments. How is that? Like, how does it feel?
Yeah.
Compared.
So I mean.
Put you on an 18th century diet.
I was just about to say, actually, in the same topic, is that when I perform with you guys without a conductor, I have to listen to all of you guys much more, and also it inspires my sound. And next to that, when I have a performance with a conductor, very often the conductor and I will have had a conversation and have plans, but the whole orchestra doesn't really have a say about it. So it's just me and the conductor on our own island, and the orchestra follows. And this is so different in this setting that you can listen to everyone and be inspired by everyone.
Because that's
And
like
of course,
one general and one army rather than an army of general.
Yeah.
And I have a question for you, Tinka. I'm not at all a singer. I don't know very little. But we spoke before about portamento, and I was wondering, do you have, so this is maybe one technique, but do you have some techniques that you know about and that you use to in this style to make this style happen if you want that, or did you have to change some aspect of your voice or to adapt to the classical period in this style? Or I don't really know. Or about vibrato, maybe, I don't know. How is it for you?
Well, definitely. I mean, it's of course a big conversation, a big discussion actually. This do we change our technique or not? And there's opposed ideas about this. I had teachers tell me, no, never change your technique, and some other teachers who say, well, I do it a little bit like this and like that. I think for me personally, what works is I don't try not to think too much about changing my technique. I think it kind of happens by itself. I think more about the style. And I think that the vibrato, it's of course a combination of technique and style. I think any singer, whether they sing Baroque or early music or classical music or only romantic music, they should be able to sing with or play with their vibrato. Maybe not 100% non-vibrato, but they should be able to use it and play with it and try to make effects with it. And that's I think that's the most important thing. I don't think me personally, I don't like singing 100% non-vibrato.
Don't do it.
But I think there's a way you can expel it.
I'll just
bring it in
for a second, because I think Amandine will have to go, but thank you, Amandine, for joining.
Thank you, Amandine.
I'm so sorry to leave you guys, and I would like to keep going, but sorry. And as in the real life, I'm the time watcher. And just to let you know that we are over 1 hour talking, and we wanted the audience staying for the next time. And I hope we are going to do it again because it's really, really interesting. And Pietronome. Yes, we have a story about an anecdote about the Pietronome. And maybe that can be a teaser for a second podcast. And if the audience want to, we do another podcast with the anecdote of the Pietronome. And it's a really funny one. That is teasing, right? Okay, sorry, guys. I'm leaving you discreetly. I failed. And take care.
Au revoir.
Ciao, au revoir.
Au revoir, Amandine.
Bonne soirée.
Can I just make one little bracket from what Tinka just said? It's just a comment that I remembered, and I think it's interesting. So my teacher once said to me something that is kind of, it's not really true, but it makes some sense. So he was saying that to play modern violin, you choose the technique first, and then you'll go look for the sound that it makes. But for historical instruments, then you have to think about the sound you want, and then you go for the technique. So I think this goes very well what you just said, Tinka, right? Like you're thinking about how it sounds, how you want it to sound, and then your technique will change accordingly. I tried to do that too. I think that's where the flexibility adaptation comes from also, because we have the sound ideal in mind, and then you play in a way that matches it rather than doing the other way around. So
yeah. The technique is there to accommodate your wishes, your needs.
Well, I also think that, for example, for us, I mean, I'm talking as a violin player, and we are so much into a sort of aesthetic of violin sound that comes from the 19th century, from the 20th century mostly, that it's also very hard to try to reconstruct another idea of sound. So it's actually by playing with instruments like the square piano of Anders, or a copy of a traverso or the winds instrument, that we can really readapt and reset another aesthetic of sound also for string instruments, because otherwise it's also the fact that we are playing on copies of instruments that were made, of course, at that time also for violins, but violins changed so much in the setting itself and in the sound production, that our aesthetic of the sound, it's kind of corrupted nowadays. So it's also part of the process now, and it's beautiful to be part of this process. So to try
I have
to
a question for I have a question for us. Is a question I ask myself very often, and I would like to actually discuss this with friends who are doing this kind of things. What do you think? Because actually the gut strings we buy online or in the store today, I mean, they're not exactly the same gut strings as the one they used. We today have very nice windows that protect us from the cold. We have a heater we can turn on. We've got
electric lights.
When it rains, we also can turn. I mean, so we are exposed automatically to different weather conditions, to different humidity factors, to different material. As you say, we try. There are copies we try to, but we are not 300 years ago. So how do we feel? How do you feel? I don't know. I don't even know how I feel myself about what are we doing? Sometimes I wonder what is so. Yeah, it's funny. I feel it's also funny to try to do something that's not the same, but we still try. And I don't know. It's funny.
Well, for me, I can say, if I can say my opinion, it's just that authenticity here is such a big question, but it's mostly about really get into the maybe the main idea of the composer of how it should be balanced, the whole thing, and that's it. And then playing with other people, in this case, you kind of you find yourself, your spot in the way that it fits the best, and that's probably how we can do in the most how to say, really with the best intentions that we can have. But of course we cannot recreate the past, and that's not even the goal, I think, of all our job, but it's mostly about getting the true, if we can say, the most honest way, the intention of the whole thing, and just find your way to get in it.
I think you touched on something very important there, Pietro, because it's about it's about honesty, right? Being genuine as possible. And in my opinion, this is my opinion. I don't want to put anyone of the orchestra with me right now because it might be controversial. But I do think that playing historically for the sake of only playing historically, as myself, Clara, it doesn't make any sense. It's because of all of discussed it. We are beings of the 21st century that went through all these years, collected all this knowledge, and there is something in us that has changed, right? We are not Baroque people anymore. We're not people from the 18th century anymore. We cannot really feel like them or think like them because we're different. So in my opinion, it's why would you waste everything that came after as well? You know, like we cannot get rid of this baggage so fast. Of course, for myself, I tend and I want to try to play as close as I can, but it doesn't mean that I won't put some of my own 21st century that is loaded with romanticism, you know, and dramaticism into my playing. I won't get rid of that. So what I can say for myself is that answer your question, Corinne, I think what I think about that, I think it's fun. I think it's my own way to express myself using tools from the past. And I don't know, it's a fun challenge, you know, because we're never gonna know. But maybe that's for the best, because maybe we're doing even better than they did before. Of course, well, that's very arrogant of me to say, but the point is to say that I mean, we're having we're creating something that is beautiful, right? That's the point, I think. Something that
There's
is
something
meaningful.
new, maybe, you know.
And new.
Maybe I'll pause it.
That's Neue Mannheim. That's true, huh? That's true. The name is there. The name is there. It's Neue. It's the new one. Yeah. That's my
Francis,
opinion.
you have a question? Or?
Yeah, it's not a question, it's a comment. Now I am reading on our chat that Edmundo is saying, I am from the first generation of historically informed performers here in Brazil. I lived for 10 years in Amsterdam, 1984, so I'm very proud to see you all gifted people making such great music, and it's very moving. Why am I... Yes, thank you, Edmundo, but why am I mentioning this? Because my own feeling, and to reply to Corinne, my own feeling is that we get, as I was saying, 60% of the final result is determined by the physicality of the instrument, by how in what it is made of. And the rest we get from the knowledge that we have received in our education, because we are Das Neue Mannheimer Orchester, but most of us have studied, like Edmundo, in schools where right now we have, what can we say, the fourth generation, the third generation of historically informed performers. Yes, and all this knowledge that is partly, so to say, humanly built input combined with the physical aspect, the hardware, we could say, when these things are combined and nurtured and sustained, and all of this goes through time in a sustained way, we have built so much knowledge. Not the knowledge that you read in the books, but the knowledge that you build in the body. And that for me comes hand in hand with the historical instruments.
Mm-hmm. Because, for instance, like if you can read about expression, but in a way it doesn't mean anything until you're expressing yourself, right? So, and I think maybe the value of historical performance is not necessarily to ignore that we live in the 21st century and just become like museum pieces or something, but to sort of recover ideas and ways of thinking and expressive sort of modes of thought, I guess, that have been lost to us now. And we can sort of somehow reconnect with a lot of things that disappeared, like, for example, like even just the idea of like expressive ideas about rhetoric and affect and moving people, these sorts of ideas that in a way have not like been transmitted from that time so smoothly, and in a way we need to almost like recover how people were thinking, because I think a lot of those ideas are not any less valid today than they were then. Sort of very humanistic ideas with expression and moving the passions, but we don't think about them in our society so much today, but it doesn't really give them any less power or value when they're used, you know, in a way that makes them effective, right?
And I completely agree, because actually, as Federico was saying before, I mean, a human is not changing, is a tool itself, which is not changing throughout the centuries. So we are still the same, we still feel the same effects, no, probably, and it's just a matter of, trying to feel it again.
Well, I don't know if I agree 100% with you. If we are completely equal, our bodies change a bit, our minds definitely, but I understand the essence of the human is still the same, man, for sure.
Because this is actually interesting. I mean, your instruments are of course different, but the instruments, the bodies that were living back then were different as well. We've generally become taller. We eat more dairy, these kind of things.
Like the diet is completely different, right?
Completely different. And for instance, for my repertoire, very often it was performed by castratos. So that's a whole other thing for me even to think about, you know, the and also something that we cannot really retrieve so easily, what that would have been like.
Probably better if we don't retrieve that.
No.
Maybe we can make a Q&A session. Of
Yeah, I think now is
for
time to-
closing. If there are some questions, and
Yeah. You can post them in the chat on YouTube if you see that
Yes.
available. Yeah,
And
we will be watching.
And maybe while we wait, we can listen some part of the Johann Christian Bach aria. Maybe
Yeah.
that will be
Just get that up and running. Uh-oh, Zoom is doing weird things. Okay, we're good.
Anders, again, where can we find these beautiful CDs?
I realize, like, I guess now you can't hear the music anymore, right? Because I switched the audio. Yeah, you can buy them on our website on dnmo.nl. You can also order them from Etcetera Records on their website as well. So if you look at the beginning of the chat and also in the link in the description on YouTube, you can see also the link to buy the albums, to order them as well. And I guess there also will be a digital release, but not exactly sure when that's going to be available. Also, you should like, share, and subscribe, but that's another thing.
Brava,
I didn't
Tinka.
see questions. Did anyone see any questions here?
Bravi tutti.
Yeah, bravi guys, beautiful.
yeah, nice dancing, everybody.
Indeed. I think there's also like a delay between the chat and the stream by like maybe 30 seconds. So maybe, I'm not sure if anyone still wants to ask a question, but if not, we can think about wrapping it up, I guess. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in on this Sunday evening. It is Sunday, right? Yeah, okay. To hear.
We just got one question now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's from Case Muskins. So historically informed is more about presenting a view of the 18th century mindset as seen through the music? That's the question.
Yeah, I suppose you could say it's a bit like that. Although I think the term people are using for that now is historically inspired. That's like the term that Bruce Haynes uses in his book, right? Like that, in a way, authenticity is not necessarily possible, but you can be historically inspired. Like you can use principles from the 18th century aesthetic and technique and instruments, and you can create something. And there's no way what you create is going to be what people were doing then, but you also did create something new that's interesting and has some artistic value for people today. So I'm not sure if did I actually answer that question?
Yeah, just adding something to your answer, and I think that playing music from the 18th century is not only about knowing how to play the music itself. I think you have to have a broader understanding of what is going on historically and some habits and other arts. You know, this is really good to put us in the mindset, in the atmosphere, you know, so we can bring back that atmosphere too. So in a way, yeah, in a way, I think you're right, Case. It's a way to present the 18th century mindset through music. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, in a way.
But I think it's still about nowadays inspiration of the artist.
Yeah.
But through a knowledge that can be in the possible most honest way possible, as I was saying before, informed about the performance practice at the time and the tools that were available at the time. But it's still like nowadays.
Yeah, that's true. That's our view of how they would do it. Our personal view. Yeah, that's true.
Goes back to like, if you think about the writings of Edmund Burke, the 18th century philosopher, he talks a lot about how taste can mold your imagination, right? So if, of course, we're all like artists, we have a very strong, very vivid imagination. And by sort of understanding the genres and the modes of performance and the techniques and everything and the rhetoric, all that, you are basically molding your taste such in a way that your imagination is expressed within the confines of a language so that you can communicate to other people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a translation, no? Like it's kind of if we need to translate from like a Greek poem or in nowadays English, or also imagine translating Harry Potter in like hundreds of languages. Like you need to understand the background, and you make it understandable so that it makes sense also for other people. And I think that is more or less what we are trying to do with our work, to move people of nowadays with the music and with the affect that were present in 18th century music.
Yeah, because that's what they all say music is about, right? Moving the passions. So if we failed at that, then we failed at the one thing that music is supposed to do. Regardless of being historical or not, if we missed their first objective, then we missed everything, right? So
yeah.
Do we have any more questions now? Or
no. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. Thank you, Jan.
Lovely greetings.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everybody for joining me.
And I hope you enjoyed it. And I wish you all, I guess, really happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Let's hope 2021 is better. Wait, I have one too. Where did I put it? Okay, whatever.
Too many CD.
And yeah, please order them through our website or from Etcetera Records. Then they will also be available in stores, but I guess all the stores are closed anyway, so it's not going to really matter. So I don't advise you to go look for it in the store, just for safety. But thanks again, and we'll catch you next time. And I guess we'll probably do this again at some point, especially for the next CD. So.
Oh, it's mirrored. Sorry, I don't know if it's worth anything.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.